holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
We've signed a climate convention on the importance of economic instruments and free markets. Were included in this mammoth Agenda 21 document and the Rio Declaration. Now, let me be clear on one fundamental point. The United States fully intends to be the world's preeminent leader in protecting the global environment.
Coming up, Technocracy News. Good morning, Patrick Wood here for Technocracy News and Trends. Today is March 23rd, 2019. Thanks for tuning in. First story up today is concerning Russia and killer robots. The title of the story is Killer Robots: Russia Races to Build Ground Force of Self-Driving Tanks and Drone Swarms. Technocracy News has been warning about this for several months now. That is the arms race that's heating up between China, United States, and Russia in particular. I'm sure there are other countries that are doing the same thing, but the application of artificial intelligence, which makes this possible, is being used to create autonomous killer drones of various kinds, whether they be tanks or drone swarms, which is the case in this Russia story. This is very serious business because automated killing can very easily get out of control. There's been a movement, actually, for several years to ban killer robots altogether throughout the world. A great movement, I suppose, but there's no way you're going to rein in people like, or countries like Russia or China. And of course, because they're doing it, the United States is doing it as well. Competition, arms race, see how many people we can kill, how efficiently we can kill them. Well, this is a story to read. There's an interesting video of coming out of Russia, actually, that shows some of the equipment that they're using. It is a little bit disconcerting, but that is what it is. Second story up, Greenpeace co-founder Patrick Moore is back in the news again, and he has again, very publicly, called global warming a complete hoax and scam. And this is what he says in this article. Fear has been used all through history to gain control of people's minds and wallets and all else, and the climate catastrophe is strictly a fear campaign. Well, fear and guilt. You're afraid you're killing your children because you're driving them in your SUV and emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. You feel guilty for doing that. There's no stronger motivation than those two. And of course, he's right. The video that was attending this and the various quotes and stuff is interesting ammunition to have available to you because, indeed, Patrick Moore was a co-founder of Greenpeace. And in my experience with some of the original Greens, like Patrick Moore, they understand that their entire movement was hijacked by the global elite. I've had many conversations with some of these people, and although Patrick Moore doesn't have a gray ponytail, many of the original Greens still do. They still look like hippies, some of them. But they're bitter. They're bitter because the likes of the Rockefeller crowd and the Trilateral Commission and so on hijacked their movement, turned it into something altogether different, and used it as a sledgehammer against the people that they were trying to protect in the first place. Oh, brother. So Patrick Moore is somewhat of a hero. He indeed is converted at this point, speaking out vocally about the global elite and what they've done. My hat's off to him. He's brave for doing so. And, of course, he takes a lot of heat. And the current members of Greenpeace literally, I'm sure, grind their teeth every time he shows up on a public platform. Well, go, Pat. I'm also pleased to announce, by the way, that in June, I'll be on a speaking platform with Patrick Moore at Doctors for Disaster Preparedness down in Tucson, Arizona. It's going to be a great gathering of medical professionals from around the country. And I've been invited to address that group on technocracy. And Patrick Moore is going to be there to talk about climate change. Third story up today is about smart cities. Well, smart cities is on everybody's mind today, at least lives in a city, because chances are your city council or somebody in the area are trying to cram this technology down your throat whether you want it or not. And this article is just, this is appeared in Forbes magazine, by the way, which is no slouch publication. Definitely a global elite publication, but it's a big one. And the title of this story is Smart Cities Going Green Because It Costs Less? That's the claim. Of course, this is propaganda. That's one of the reasons I wanted to put this story in. It's talking about a couple of particular smart city examples, like in Toronto, the so-called Quayside area is being converted into a smart city, or actually is being built up from the ground up as a smart city. But technocrats are building these smart cities. They're using the same corrupted logic as global warming zealots, that their investments somehow and their intent, the inventions are cheaper than all other solutions. In fact, the truth is sustainable development, wherever it's applied, drives up costs in every category, especially in urban living. It's true in rural as well, but urban living especially. Prices of goods and services go up. Prices of real estate goes up. And this article, however, argues just the opposite. It argues that, well, prices always go down when smart city technology is implemented. That's absolutely false. But it's good that you read an article like this and find out, well, what are they saying and how can they get away saying this? It's absolutely diametrically opposed to the truth and to the reality of the matter. I would even go further to say that the homeless problem in places like California, some of the big cities there, this is very sad. Some parts of California, especially in Los Angeles, look like a third world country, slum. People living on the street, garbage, trash everywhere, feces. There's no toilet facilities and stuff. I mean, it's just an absolute mess. I'm going to suggest, I'll suggest again, that a large part of the homeless problem today is a result of increasing costs in cities where people can no longer afford to live, and they end up on the street. Now, I haven't done a study on this personally. I've seen some other articles that hint at this. I think it's absolutely right. Now, many of these people, of course, want to be on the street. That's always been the case. There's always been a contingent of homeless people that have problems, issues, maybe mental issues or whatever, and they end up on the street, and they're somehow happy living on the street, and they don't want to do anything else. And you have the dope addicts and so on. They shouldn't be there, dope addicts on the street, but they're there too. They might want to be there. But there's still a large number of people, especially families, who don't want to be on the street. They're ashamed to be on the street, and they got bounced out of their living quarters or whatever because they couldn't afford it. Smart cities are going in the wrong direction as far as costs are concerned. They increase the cost everywhere you see this stuff implemented. Just go check out San Diego, for instance. Go check out some places in South Korea, for instance. Prices go up. Property prices go up. Of course, investors think that's great, but it's not great for the people that live there. So I'll take a moment for shameless self-promotion to suggest to you that if you haven't had a copy yet of Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order, now would be a great time to get it and read it before summer. It's so important to get this information out, my friends. Americans need to know, and the time to know is now. And if it's not us who gets it out, who on earth will do it? You see, I don't believe that as people, I don't believe that all Americans are just absolutely resistant to the truth. It's just that they don't have access to it. And if we don't give them access to some of this information, how will they ever know? And I will suggest you cannot fight an enemy that you do not know. Most analysts and pundits are now pointing to the things we're talking about here and saying, oh, that is communism and socialism. Well, I'll tell you what, it's not communism and socialism. I'll reiterate this again. In the 1930s, communists and technocrats hated each other. Openly, they wrote articles against each other. And if a technocrat was to meet a communist face-to-face, which there were many communists in America back in that day, in the 1930s, they would get into an argument because they're diametrically opposed. It's apples and oranges at least. Communism and socialism are political systems. Technocracy is an economic system. The technocrats swore that they needed to get rid of the price-based economic system, which is capitalism and free enterprise, of course. Communism still used a price-based economic system. That's why they didn't like them. They said they're all wet because they continued to use the price-based economic system. The technocrats said, no, we need an energy-based economic system, resource-based but controlled by energy. So energy would take the place of money. And this was the way they would balance the economy, the resources of the world, against the usage and how much people consumed. Well, they're still enemies. They're still at odds. Philosophically, they're completely at odds with each other. And technocracy is different. It's the scientific management of society, social engineering run amok, scientific dictatorship, like in China, like we see building in India, like we see building even in Europe. This is not socialism. You can call it socialism because it looks like kind of like totalitarianism, but you'd be wrong. It's technocracy. This is the enemy we need to focus on. This is the enemy we need to understand. We see this building through the Green New Deal as well, with AOC and Justice Democrats and the Young Turks and so on. And these people are building up a system of technocracy, whether they know it openly or not themselves. They have fallen prey to the ideology that comes from the United Nations as sustainable development. And as you know, for those of you who have actually read Technocracy Rising or Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order, you know that the United Nations received the doctrine of Agenda 21 and sustainable development from members of the Trilateral Commission. That is the global elite group that originally started this whole initiative. And they had help from their friends. Yes, they did. They had the Bilderberg Group behind them because it was the Bilderberg Group that David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski went to in 1972 and floated the idea of the Trilateral Commission. They said, oh, we'll be right behind you. Go for it. So they did, 1973. Then you have the Club of Rome, which had a membership overlap with the Trilateral Commission. They came out with a treatise between 68 and 72 of limits to power, limits to growth, which brought up all of the scaremongering stuff that's been used against us. Then they fed sustainable development to the UN for the 1992 Rio Conference, thanks to Gro Harlem Brundtland, a European environmental politician. She created a book called Our Common Future. It was common, all right. Here we are today, eating dust because of it. But she impacted the entire planet with this doctrine, thanks to the United Nations taking it hook, line, and sinker. Well, that's it for today. Please share these articles anywhere that you can on social media, email, friends, whatever. Share this podcast as well. It's a great way for people to listen if they can't read for some reason, or they just have time when they're in the car, they're cooking dinner, or whatever they might be doing, exercising at the gym, got your smartphone on you. You can get podbean.com and download the app for free. You can also pick up the podcast on iTunes and Spotify and other iHeartRadio and other leading podcast subscription services. So basically, there's no excuse to not download it and listen to it somewhere along the way. So until next time, I'm Patrick Wood for Technocracy News and Trends. Thanks for listening.